Well, hello. Finance can be messy, but don't worry. We clean it up with facts, fun, and maybe a little sarcasm. Welcome to the Financial Sandbox. Let's get into it. My guest today is Cameron Tope. Cameron, you're originally from Athens, Ohio. I was just in Columbus, Ohio, and
Oh,
it was very interesting. It was cold. It was a couple weeks ago here in the Bay Area. I had left. It was averaging in March in the 80s, and then I landed in Columbus. I was really glad I brought that coat.
you never know the weather. Never know. Snow, rain, sunshine, all in the same week.
Oh yeah, it was great. You started in oil and gas.
Yeah.
What did you see in that industry that made real estate feel less risky?
Well, so I went to school in Ohio, graduated and moved and worked, moved to Houston and worked with British Petroleum right out of school. So 2013, fresh graduate, $40,000 in student loans, and then the market fell out. Oil was
Right.
like 120. It was amazing, six-figure job. I'm thinking, I'm on top of the world. And then within 6 months, they're talking about layoffs, substantial cutbacks. So it was pretty tumultuous time. And that's when I was like, I saw some older guys who were like Joe Cool about it. They were not worried. They were not stressed. They were not anxious. And so I picked their brain, and they basically said they own like, a handful of rental homes. And that was paying or going to pay if they got laid off until the next cycle. And so I just realized like I could kind of take control of my own destiny per se by having this rent. You have long-term, 12, 18-month agreements, and that could kind of smooth out some of these crazy up and downs with the oil and gas market. So that was the main piece.
Uh-huh. So, as you've seen a couple of my interviews, my role in financial services really is working with people who own rentals. They own
Mhm.
lots of them. Maybe they own apartment buildings or warehouses or car washes, and they're just at an age where they're transitioning out.
Mhm.
Where did you see those people, like, their exit strategy? Did they tell you they had an exit strategy, or were they just loving rentals and the real job was like a second gig?
Yeah, I think the big thing I see is where you get this equity buildup, right? So you get so much equity. We've had great appreciation since what 2010, 11, 12 was the bottom. And
Yep.
now it's like we have 300, 400. I mean, in California areas, 500, 600 grand, and you're making $200 a month in cash flow, $300 a month, maybe, five, $6,000 a year. So you got a $500,000 making you only a few $1,000s a year. That's a terrible return. And that's when people are going to move out into something, we see it's like you either do a cash out refinance, which at today's interest rates are a lot higher. Historically they're pretty
Sure.
average,
Yeah.
but for the past 30 years, interest rates have gone down until recently. So the next option is maybe trade up into something that's going to be a little bit better on cash return perspective.
So I'm going to ask you two questions at the same time. How many rentals do you own now, first of all? But when you bought your first rental, what did you think you understood that you later realized you absolutely did not understand?
Well, the second one's a long answer, so I answered the first one. I think it's 31, 32. It's somewhere right in there, Herb. I don't count them like every day and look at all
Yeah.
that. I'm more focused on the
Yeah.
management business, but it's
Sure.
31, 32, and I haven't really done much acquisitions in the past couple of years just because of prices. I picked up one, last year, but the second piece I thought I knew a lot. And I think that's the big thing. It's like when you make a meal, you know immediately or as soon as you're eating it, whether that was good decision or bad decision.
Right.
Whereas when you're putting a tenant in a property, you might not know for 6 months, nine
Right.
months, till you
Right.
actually go in and open the door and you're like, oh my gosh, was there 30 people living here? How many animals do they have in this place? So you think your rent's coming in and you're like, marching down the bank, you feel good, and then you just all of a sudden you're hit with that, like, oh my gosh, I made a terrible mistake. So I did a lot of that, her bumping my toe, hitting my head with just things that, my hairline used to be a lot further forward. And then you learn, you just learn. And I cut my teeth on my own properties and then started managing for friends and family. And that's where it's like, then you have to get licensed in Texas. So you have to be a licensed agent to do property management. So learn more on that side. And then, today we manage about 300 properties across Houston.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, because you started your own property management company in addition to managing your own rentals.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it came naturally where it was like, and that was not my intention. My intention was to build up a rental portfolio to take control back of my destiny and my time. And then it just kind of spiraled where people were asking like, "Hey, would you mind managing mine?" And I'm like, "Okay, what's one more? What's one more?" And now then it became like, "Okay, I've got about, 40, 50 doors, and I think I need to start, I need some help."
Right.
And officially stepped away in well, I guess we started the business in 2019 and then officially stepped away from corporate America. There was like a year there where I stuck around while I started the business. 2020 officially walked away from BP and have been doing this full time ever since.
So what did oil and gas teach you about systems, volatility, real estate cycles? Because oil has cycles, right? And the risk that still shows up in having to manage rentals.
I think the biggest thing, Herb, so I worked in a handful of different jobs and some of them offshore where, you're on $1 billion facility. I mean, with all these pipelines, you're in 6,000 feet of water. And it was a lot about risk and how do you de-risk and how do we make sure that if this place shuts down, you're shutting down 200, 300, 400,000 barrels of oil a day.
Yeah.
And do the math at $100 a barrel. That's a lot of money. So
Yeah.
It was more about reliability and making sure we evaluated risk. And I took that into asset management or property management with rentals because a lot of that is risk, right? Like,
right.
When you're screening a tenant, how risky do you want to take it? You could, I always tell owners like, hey, I could rent your $2,000 property for probably $2,200, but we're probably going to collect it one time and then we're going to have to evict the tenant next month. It's just, you have to be mindful that the people that are going to pay that or do that, that's a riskier proposition. Where I see a lot of people in property management or buying a rental property, they get taken out with one fell swoop. It's one eviction that's $10,000, $20,000 that just wipes them out and they can never recover. So
Sure.
as much as you want to maximize income, you also have to protect the downside. And that could be even more important because it can be so expensive.
What did your family and friends think when you started buying rentals? Were they encouraging or?
I think so. I think it was probably split. I think some were like, "Oh my gosh, what is this guy doing?" And I think some were like, "Okay, I can kind of see." At that time when I started buying in 2013, 14, it was the bottom. I think some people were still stung. Like my parents were kind of like, "Well, be careful. We just went through this thing." Whereas, it kind of like engineer friends that I had, the mathed. It's like, man, I could buy this property for, I bought properties in Houston for the cheapest one was 40,000 and then up to several $100,000. And it's like, and I can rent this at $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month. And, as a W-2 earner, you get great tax benefits. So the math, it was just executing that was the difficult piece.
Right. You've often said, in effect, that many landlords are running the rentals wrong. What are they doing wrong? What don't they realize is expensive or is risky?
I would say the biggest thing I see, Herb, is people treating it like a hobby. I think when people come in, they're like, "Well, listen, I've got the tenant in place. I don't hear from them, so I'm assuming all is well." That could be further from the truth. Maybe. Yeah. What's the cat in the box? The old theory where it's like you don't know the dead cat, or you don't realize it's. I forget the analogy there, but
analogy, yeah.
But that's it. It's like, okay, I could have a catastrophe, but you don't know until you open that front door. You don't know until you do an inspection, or then you miss rent, and then you go over there and realize I've made a grave mistake. So I think that's the first one is like, you need to be systematic in how you do this. There's a bunch of great tools and softwares out there. So, pick, and it changes all the time, even from when I started. But the thing is about treating it seriously, like making sure you're doing tenant screening well and being, thorough on that. People are like, well, it's a single mom. I want to help her out. Well, this guy just moved here from out of town. And he seems nice, so I want to help him out. It's like, that's going to get you in trouble. But from a fair housing standpoint, but also from being a friend to somebody that you're letting them in, maybe your most valuable asset, maybe your retirement or, a large sum of money.
It sounds like what I'm hearing you say is that owners manage by emotion, convenience, or just habit. I mean, how does that show up in the numbers?
Yeah, so that's a perfect way to describe it. I'm going to steal that from you, Herb. The emotional landlord, and it's like, hey, it feels good. I'm doing what I feel is right, but that shows up in the numbers by letting the tenant slide a little bit on rent, letting oh, I don't need to go do an inspection. That costs a little bit of money. I don't want to go walk the property. Maybe it's too much time involved. I got a good feeling about it. The cost is an eviction, which we talked about, can be anywhere from 5,000. The most I think I've seen that we've experienced is about 25,000. We had somebody come to us and the tenants were behind on rent. And when you factored in damages, it was about $25,000 mistake. So we earned our property management fees, about $100 a month, multiple times over if we can prevent that. And I think that's the big thing. It's like those emotional things that come one time or twice, a lot around tenant screening, a lot around rent collection. The other one is around maintenance and repairs. Unlike fine wine, repairs don't get better with time. So there are certain things, leaks, that just get worse and worse. And we kind of like, oh, I'll put a Band-Aid on it. I'm not going to mess with it. And then all of a sudden you got a mold call, which can be very, very expensive or very dangerous. So there's stuff like that.
So I think that landlords don't, and property owners who get into this, they don't really understand that there's a hidden tax by being the casual landlord.
That's it. That you don't know. And that is the hardest thing to explain to new investors as well. It's, I had a guy who called me the other day, he was an accountant, and he said, I've got this property, it's been sitting vacant. I don't know if I want to hire a property manager or not and get it leased out, but I don't have the time. And I said, well, how long has it been vacant? And he said, well, 2 years. And I was like, okay, so at $2,000 a month, I was like, I just want to, I would just want to level set with you. You've lost $50,000 already. And they don't see that because you can see like a management expense or a repair, all those are on your P&L, and it's very easy to see like that's an expense, but you don't see the money you were supposed to get or you could have gotten. And that goes back to being the hobbyist. Like, I'll get the repair done later. I'll get this property ready to market later. I'll take my time and, spend 3 or 4 weeks getting estimates and repairs and take, to get the property market ready. It's like, you need to get on that because every day in California, it's a lot more, right? I mean, you could be talking hundreds of dollars a day you're losing. In Houston, with our average rents, I always like to tell owners you're losing about $100 a day. And that's a good rough number to use.
Yeah. Triple that. Here. You mentioned the $25,000, and I thought, God, that's a starting point here in California. So, yeah, it can get a little crazy. What's the difference between owning a rental and operating a rental business?
That is a loaded question. If you don't have a property manager, you are the property manager. I always like to say that because you're the one taking the calls. You're the one who's responsible for making sure things are taken care of. It's a safe and operable property for the tenant. And if you have a manager, that's their job. So for us, we're looking at, systems, we're building processes, we're making sure from the business side that I have the people in place, which you could do as an individual, but you have the people in place to take care of stuff. We have somebody dedicated to maintenance. We have somebody dedicated to leasing. We have somebody dedicated to owner relations. Whereas in an individual, you're probably learning about like, okay, how does this house work? How much does a hot water tank cost? How, what is this lease? I need to go find a lease form that to send out. So you're probably a little more tactical, which is how I was when I started, Herb. I didn't know anything. I used the Texas Association of Realtors lease and I read through it and we didn't have Chat GPT back then to be able to skim through that stuff. So doing this all the old fashioned way. And so I think the big difference is you're probably more like the blinders are probably on where you're a little more tactical as a mom and pop landlord, or maybe you own a couple properties. Whereas from a business perspective, we're looking at, high level, how we can tackle and specialize, kind of like a McDonald's thing where it's like you specialize here or manufacturing. You've got somebody to specialize in making sure we take care of these as efficiently as possible.
So how do you respond when an owner says, I don't want to pay for professional management because I want to keep more cash flow? What's your response to that?
I think And it really depends. If you're 22, 23, and you're ready to set the world on fire, more power to you. You've got the time. Maybe you don't have a family yet. So listen, go do it. And I usually recommend owners do it themselves for a little bit, just so they can see that. Like when the tenant inevitably calls in at, I mean, I don't know why, but hot water tanks seem to go out between 1 a.m. and 4. Sewer lines seem to go out in the middle of the night. So once you go through a couple of that, then you'll see some of the value. And there are certain people that it doesn't make sense for. Some people have spouses that work from home or not at all. And that's a perfect opportunity, maybe to become a real estate professional and get some tax deductions on that side. But I would say for the majority of people, you just got to factor in some of your time. If you're working, I was talking to a guy the other day, he worked at Google. And I'm like, he's got a multiple 6-figure salary. And it's like, you're going to pay us less than a cup of coffee a day to manage your property. And you want to mess with that when you could talk about career progression or how you're going to invest your $300,000 a year salary. Like you're walking over dollars to pick up pennies. So I think it depends. It depends on what the owner's situation is. If maybe they're older and ready for retirement. It's like, do you really want to be doing this? But the other thing is staying up on the laws, and is probably much more important with California than is Texas, because Texas is a little more landlord friendly.
Oh yeah. It's funny. I'm laughing because you mentioned the water heater, and in our building, the water heater just went out.
There you go.
and it went out at 11 in the morning. I didn't realize it till 4 in the afternoon when the water was cool. And we got the plumber out. Plumber gave us a situation. We wound up getting, I'm going to leave the manufacturer's name out of this. But by Monday, they said, oh, well, we could ship you the part. But I was talking to the plumber. He said he had to get approval from 3 to 5 people, and it would take a couple days, and the part may take 2 weeks. So I emailed a couple executives at the company and said, it's pretty unacceptable that you guys can't get a part to us. I will tell you that was Tuesday morning, and by Wednesday night, the part was here and the water heater was fixed. So it does pay to talk to the right people in the chain to get it done. So I'm a big fan of Gary Keller Williams, right? He's he talks about models, systems, and leverage, right? What's the one thing most landlords should fix first if they want better performance on the rentals?
Gosh, there's so many different facets. I think the first thing, I guess, if I'm looking at it as when you're buying a property, as soon as you buy a property, the first thing I would do is buy in a desirable area. From 2013, when I started, until about 2022, we were in a supply shortage of housing. So you could put lipstick on a pig and that property would lease, you'd still have 20 applications. Sure. The tides have turned and things are changing. So if you're you're thinking that what you did in 2015 is going to work in 2026, it's not. Mm-hmm. And maybe in some of the California coast where it's like you always going to have demand. But for most people, if you're buying way outside town because it's a good deal, then you're going to be suffering when you have unlimited options. When these different tenants have 4 or 5 different houses on the same street to choose from, or all over the city. So that would be number one, is making sure you buy in a desirable area. It's never been more important. And I'm not saying that as hyperbole. I really do believe that now, if you can't attract a good tenant, you're already going to, you're already starting off on the wrong foot.
Yeah. It sounds like you're saying the right manager should make an owner feel less busy, but more informed. Is that fair?
Yeah. And I think that's a big thing that we do. If you go back to, I've been doing this for, again, a little over 10 years, but for 7 or 8 of those years, I've been doing videos and education for owners to try to educate the self-manager. And there are people that watch my stuff, probably similar to you, that never hire us. They just take the good information and they use it, which is amazing. We're elevating the community. But then when they realize, man, I'm getting myself in trouble, or this is a little more complex, and they come to us. So I am very much about educating people, for sure.
So it sounds like your best clients don't want to be rescued. They want to be advised. Is that accurate?
Well, I would say yes, unless they're going through an eviction, then they're like, help. So yeah, I think, and that's it. That's why we kind of look at ourselves as asset managers. It's like, you could be a property manager, but I think property manager is more reactive and more like, okay, I'm going to go execute on resolving the maintenance item. I'm going to go execute on this lease renewal. Whereas asset managers, what we try to do is, okay, what's the strategy? What is the strategy behind your maintenance plan, your CapEx plan? So you bought this property, there's a 10-year-old roof on it or a 15-year-old roof. Like, how much useful life do we have? Let's start setting aside some money for that. Leasing, this is a strategy. Let's get this leased because we're coming up winter and we don't want to have this property sit. So let's maybe drop the price a little more than we would, or maybe it's summer, it's super competitive in the area. Let's try to bump that rent up a little bit.
So tell me about your market. Where are your rentals now? Where are you focused, and where do you see the growth?
So yeah, greater Houston area, we manage properties about 1 hour from downtown. I am seeing Houston has great growth. We're not in Austin or Dallas or San
Right,
Antonio. Austin
right.
was one of those markets that shot up really high. I think a lot of Californians moved over to Austin and jacked prices up, and then subsequently there's been double-digit rent declines for the past 2 years, I think, Herb. So
Did
Houston's
we
been much more.
leave?
Sorry.
Did we leave? Did we leave? Did we get there and not like it and say, okay, I'm out?
I think after the summer, they're like, okay, no, 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 no. But it's went up really quick, and it was kind of, I mean, I don't want to say it was easy to spot, but it was like, man, you're not going to get 17% year over year appreciation and
Right,
not have to pay the maker at some point.
right,
So
right,
whereas Houston, we did have almost double digit, but it's been a little bit more stable and a little bit more sustainable.
right.
And now that inventory is a little up, that we are seeing stuff kind of flatten out, Herb. So we still have great economy. We still have it. It's very business friendly. A lot of folks are moving out of, New York's been a hot topic right now, moving to Florida or Texas to these low cost, there's no state income tax states.
Right.
So that's super friendly. And Houston has diversified their economy across medical, retail's been big. And then, it's just these companies are moving their headquarters there, as well as shipping and transportation from the Gulf. So it's a very diverse market, whereas it used to just be very oil and gas focused. It's kind of diversified a lot since then.
That's good. So a lot of your commentary lately has been Houston is no longer a buy it and it goes up market. It's an execution market. What does that mean in plain English?
It means that no longer can you just set it and forget it. No longer can you just buy a property and hope and it going to go up. In 2013, you could have bought almost anything. I mean, just like almost the stock market, right? You could have bought anything over the past 10 years and it went up. Now you've got to be more tactful. You got to buy in desirable areas. You've got to operate that property. I've seen people buy amazing, beautiful properties and run it right into the ground. They put a friend or a family member or somebody that they didn't screen in there, and sometimes that can get a little precarious. Some people want you to do favors or they lost their job, and then the asset starts wearing down. It's hard to, you got to evict somebody. They can damage the property. So
Right.
yeah, desirability, buying in desirable areas is probably the biggest thing. And I didn't do that when I first started either, Herb. I was like, where I've got, $30,000-$40,000, where can I put it to work? Now it's
Sure.
like, okay, hold on. I'm not looking at just for the right deal, but where is the most desirable area that's going to have the highest likelihood of rent growth?
When you say vacancy kills cash flow, what does that look like numerically for an owner who thinks, I'll just wait for a better tenant?
So Rent Engine just came out with a study, and they've got like tens of thousands of listings across the United States. So great data. They do a quarterly report. If you're not, and I'm not getting paid to say this, I just think if you are in rentals, it's probably a great report. I look at it every quarter to get, and it's free. But they said that 1/3 of all your prospective tenants come within the first 7 days. So, or back, again in 2020, 2021, hey, it's a $2,000 a month property. I'll list it for 2,200. Maybe I have to come down to 21, but no big deal. I've got a lot of options. You do not
Right.
have that same luxury today.
Uh-huh.
So
Okay.
you want to test the market, similar in the sales market. You want to test it. You're going to miss 1/3 of all your tenants, which
Right.
means now you're like, okay, oh, actually, I do want to come down to 2,000. I'm okay with that. Well, you've missed 1/3. So now you've let it sit, and that vacancy kills cash flow goes back to if you have a $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month property, every month or day that sits vacant, it's hundreds and hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars. And it's that phantom thing that you just don't realize until the end of the year. And you're like, why didn't I make any money on this place?
So I'm going to back up to Rent Engine. What is Rent Engine? You mentioned it a minute ago.
Yeah, they're a company and they're kind of on the forward of AI, and they do screening, listings, self-showings, and they're buzzing a lot in the community now in the property management space because they're just tying in all this amazing data that they can get with AI and doing it for fraud prevention. I mean, there's all sorts of different things they're doing, but they do a lot of education as well to educate owners and property managers, which is great.
What do you find most valuable in that tool for what you do in property management?
I would say probably sifting through the fake stuff. So now with AI and being able to generate images and stuff, fake pay stubs, fake ESA and service animal stuff, I mean, just fake everything. I mean, we had fake IDs. We've had people put in fake driver's license and stuff, and they catch that. So the fraud, I think, is probably on another level that, I don't understand how they do it, Herb. It's like the pixelations and something of this, and they go into the images. It's magic to me, but somehow they come out and go, this is not legitimate. And I think that's been a big thing because fraud was on the rise. I did a newsletter a couple months ago, and I forget how high it's getting, but it is getting rampant. Like with all these technologies, people are using it for good, as well as the fraudsters now have it.
Sure. How should you think? How do you think landlords should think about pricing today? Is it maximizing rent, or is it minimizing vacancy and compromising on that rental amount?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. Right now, I've been advising all of our owners to listen, if you got to take $50, $100 less, let's ride out this storm, get a tenant instead of letting that thing sit 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And then you're going to be sitting there again every month, every day, you're losing a lot of money. And I think that's the thing now. It's not the time to be picky. It's not the time to be stubborn. And I have done that. Hey, the rents say this, 2,100, I'm getting 2,100. Well, you got to wait 3 months. Your average is probably 1,900 or 1,800 now throughout the year because you lost $6,000.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the same thing. I work with clients putting an apartment building ready for sale, and I'll get the list of excuses, the list of I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to price it here, I want to price it there, and oftentimes I have to say, when was the last time you timed an apartment building market? What do you know? What do you know about timing the market?
Oh, it's a fool's errand. Totally a fool's errand. I mean, look, a good example is the stock market. I mean, people have thought for the past 6-9 months that the stock market's going to go down, and I think we just hit an all-time high this week.
Oh, it's every day we hit an all-time high, but I'm just not even.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing. It's like you can't predict that, and there's people that make hundreds of millions of dollars trying to do that. If you think you can predict the housing market, which is made up of a lot of individuals, I think it's a fool's errand. It's just not something.
Absolutely.
Yeah, not a strategy.
I want to talk about your personal portfolio. You own over 30 rentals. What type of property do you like today that you might have ignored earlier on in your career?
The big one is what I was talking about earlier with desirability. Before, I was looking for cash flow so I could leave my W-2 job. So I took stuff a little bit on the outskirts of town that had not high appreciation, but better cash flow numbers. Today, if I would have bought all appreciation throughout my career and not cash flow, I'd probably have another 7 figures to my wealth. And that's not an exaggeration, just because of how crazy appreciation has been. So now I'm looking more at like the desirability, the great school districts, where people want to be. And that's where I would invest instead of getting on the fringes and looking for a good deal.
Is there a property that taught you the most expensive lesson?
Yep, I can think of it. 1728 Connervale. And that property is a duplex.
Like a bad girlfriend. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, scars for sure. Probably lost a little more hairline on the girlfriend than that one, but it's a duplex, and it was not permitted that way, but it was a really good deal. And the cash flow numbers on it it's like making $1,000 a month, which I know in probably California is not much, but in Houston that was really good.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't permitted. There was the septic, the lot was very small. They didn't have the right septic tank, without getting too far into it. They didn't have the right septic. So when I go to sell that property,
Yep.
it's going to be a bear. And again, in a housing shortage, oh, you got to get on this deal right now. Come on, you get your emotions all riled up, and I'm looking, going, this is a good deal, but it's not in a desirable area. The septic's going to be a problem. You have the neighbors. It's shared laundry in the middle. It's not a good conversion who did it. And that property, I'm probably still going to make money on it because it still cash flows, but that's been the most expensive lesson for sure.
So you still own it?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Wow. You didn't
selling. Sorry.
You didn't dump it out of the portfolio. You didn't cut your losses.
Well, it's just transaction costs can be so high, right? You got realtor fees, you got to pay taxes. That's why people 1031. And, right. I would rather do a 1031 than not, but with prices being the way they are and just the supply glut, I don't think I'm going to get a good price. So it's like, well, if it's still making $1,000 a month, I'm not going to sell it. But when I do go to sell it, it's going to be a nightmare.
So why do so many property managers disappoint owners?
I think similar to the hobbyist piece. They think I'm going to take on as many doors as I possibly can, and I'm going to do as little work as I possibly can, and I'm going to be reactive instead of proactive. Mm-hmm. And that way, if I have 100 doors and you got one, and you're one guy or gal, that's decent money with everything. Now you're probably busy, but they're trying to probably get a volume gain. And I think that can be a big thing where just they don't understand that. Like, again, the feedback loop taking a while. So as long as you're not getting your phone's not ringing, you're like, no big deal. Instead of
right.
spending that free time to plan and build a system.
Sure.
I see a lot of agents become property managers, and those agents are not analytical. They're more of, they're very bubbly, very gregarious, and they're amazing at showing you a home and sales, but right. Tactical details and systems are not their proclivity. And I think that's where I see a lot of people get in trouble. They think, if I manage property, nobody's bothered me. Same thing with self-managers. No big deal.
Yeah. So do you think it's a industry that's underpaid, under systemized, or just poorly aligned in terms of its goals?
It could be all the above, because certain states do not have any licensing. So if you think about, most people think property manager is just a dude in a truck with a hammer. I mean, yes. That's, the old school that didn't have any systems, but he would go out and fix the commode or fix the garbage disposal when it breaks. And now things are changing, becoming a lot more sophisticated, like the multifamily industry, whereas single family has been, more of the, I guess, ugly or redheaded stepchild, for lack of a better phrase. But I don't know. I don't know if the incentives are not aligned, but I know countrywide, it just varies from state to state on how seriously people look at property managers. And again, with states that require no licensing, I mean, you get a business card and a website, which costs you very little money. You can say you're a property manager, and you're going to manage. You're going to be responsible for somebody's $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 asset. I mean, that's a lot of responsibility. So I do believe in some sort of licensing or some sort of just ability to make sure that this person knows what they're doing before they start. You hand them the keys to maybe your most valuable asset.
Right. Training and education. It's the same when you're selling real estate. I coach, and I always have to tell people, look, you're responsible for someone's largest asset, possibly. And if it's not their largest asset because they own 20 properties, that doesn't really matter. It is a large asset in their portfolio, something that they had bought, they thought about very deeply to make that transaction, and you have a responsibility to honor that and respect it.
Yeah, we have owners. Oh,
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we have a couple owners who their LLC is literally their son or daughter's initials, or son and daughter's initials, and they said this is their college fund and everything. So anytime we talk about stuff, it's like I try to get with the team and say, guys, we are managing somebody's college fund. We have a
Yeah.
couple older folks who this is their retirement. Like
Yeah.
we have an obligation and a duty to make sure we take care of this, just like you said.
Yeah. It's the same in my role, whether it's working in financial services, trying to help someone fill a 1031 need and figure out that long-term exit strategy, or a car wash, an apartment building. It's the same. You really have to take ownership of that.
Yeah.
What's harder, managing properties or managing people, or managing your own expectations?
I would say, yeah, expectations definitely, that's one that I think that's also why property managers get a bad rap. Not that they don't deserve it, for sure, but I think there is a little misalignment with expectations. Some people come in and they think, again, assistant, I'm getting somebody who I'm going to tell them what to do, or they think they're getting a professional, but they're not paying that way. They're going with the lowest cost option, and they're just getting a bunch of remote people who don't have experience that drive down costs. So I think setting expectations is super important with owners. I would say that, but people is, that's why I think all this private equity money is coming into property management, because there's just, people have to live, and AI, as good as it's getting, they have to have a place to live, and they're still people. They're unknown. You have no idea if the tenant's going to call and be upset or not, or and houses are unknown. Like your hot water tank, there was no alarm on when that thing was going to blow, and boom, it went.
And it turned out to be a $15 part.
Oh my God. That's awesome that you called and got it expedited, because that's one reason we do not work with home warranty companies, because we have seen that where it's like, oh yeah, it's going to be 2 weeks to get the part. And we're like, Texas property code, we got to be in there in 7 days. What are you talking about? This isn't acceptable. We got to go. So they definitely handcuff you sometimes as home warranty companies.
So you have a dog, right? Is it
Yes,
Lola?
sir.
Lola? Yeah. What has Lola taught you about property management?
Lola taught me about property management. Well, I would say that 80% of tenants have pets. So almost all of our staff have pets. And I get owners every now and then who are stubborn. My dad's this way. They own a couple rental properties back in Ohio. No pets, absolutely not. Nope, never going to happen. Properties vacant for 4 months. I try to tell them, but what do I know? Pets, you almost have to allow pets. Again, 80% of the tenants have pets. So you just want to screen them and make sure they're good, they're low risk. And I think, that's probably one of the bigger things with dogs or pets. It's like everybody has them. They can be a great companion. And I think they're not a hindrance to the property. It's a package deal. You get the tenants with the pets.
I was hoping the answer was going to be more about dog loyalty or not choosing the expensive things, right?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Yeah, stay off the baseboards. Yeah.
Exactly. What do you think landlords should stop tolerating?
That's a really, really good question, Herb. And I don't want to give a knee-jerk answer.
I'll let you think about it. That's all right. We can come back to it. I like to stump people every once in a while.
No, it's good. I don't think I've ever been asked that. And I think that is a very, what should you stop tolerating? I would say mediocrity. And the reason I say that is because I think this industry, single family rentals, gets that hobbyist, or like, I'll just buy one. I'll hire, the cheapest agent I can. I'll get some random handyman. And I think what do they say? When you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. It's like, you need to make sure that this is a professional business. There are people who do it as hobbyists. There are people you could hire, agents. Some agents are hobbyists.
Yeah.
But I think making sure you're going to get hobbyist type attention. So making sure that you do not settle for mediocrity. You do not settle for a vendor that does stuff on the side. You do not settle for a property manager that does stuff on the side. You don't settle for lenders or 1031 exchange professionals that do that as a hobby.
Right.
Do not accept that mediocrity, especially now where you're just it's too difficult right now. There's just too much pressure on the industry that alleviate that by building a solid team of professionals that do it day in and day out.
It's interesting that you say that. In real estate in California, California has always been, it's not been a contract when buyers have worked with agents. It's always been by the word, right? It's always, every other state had a buyer broker agreement, but not really in California. And after the lawsuit a couple of years ago, the buyer broker agreement came in, and agents have really had a hard time with it. And one of the things I've always said to a seller is, when you hired that contractor to build your house or remodel your kitchen, or the plumber to come in and replumb your house, did you have a contract?
And I bet the answer is 99% of the time, no.
And oh no, they had a contract. But it's kind of like, if you expect to pay someone a 5-figure amount of money to do professional work for you, don't you want a contract?
Yes.
And
absolutely.
and every time I've sat down with someone, they have it's like the coin drops. And they say, gosh, I hadn't thought about it that way. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's because the general public doesn't have a respect for the real estate profession,
Yes.
because they think it's a bunch of people who lunch. I always joke, you get a license, you sell a house, buy a Jaguar, right? And it's so not
So
how it
cool.
happens, right? So same thing with property management. You guys suddenly have 30 properties that you're managing. So this has got to be easy.
Yep.
What should a landlord start measuring? I asked what they should stop tolerating. What should they start measuring?
Vacancy is a big one. So if you think about, okay, you moved out of the property, or you can't sell and you're going to turn it over to a rental, how quickly is the organization from the time you hire that person or you start? Is it they got in there, they rekeyed, they did the inspection, they're getting estimates for the vendors, they're getting the property marketed and professional pictures, and boom, they're getting it on the market? How long is that? Our KPI is 10 days, meaning that if they move out on the end of the month, we want to be on the market listed photos by the 10th. And sometimes we beat that. If it's a huge, 30, 40, $50,000 rehab, we're going to miss that. But for stuff, you want to be quick. You want to have stuff lined up and be organized. So that's one, is like, how quickly is this property marketed? Then once it gets marketed or listed, how quickly are we finding a tenant? And then how much frequently is the tenant renewing? Is the tenant happy? What is the resident satisfaction? Our software, we actually send a survey to the tenants after every single maintenance request. And it says, how do we do? And you go 1 through 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. And that tag goes to the vendor. So we quarterly review all of our vendors to say who's 5s and who's getting 1s. And at the end of the year, when we do our vendor appreciation event, we bonus and cut some of these vendors. The low performers go. So if there's a way to do that with the tenant satisfaction or resident satisfaction, the number one reason tenants leave is lack of attention to maintenance. So however you can manage that, or if you have a property manager, making sure you're measuring that as well. Responsiveness to the tenant.
So you used an acronym, KPI. What's KPI?
Key performance indicator. And all that is a way to objectively look at something. So say, okay, here's our key performance indicator. Instead of saying, I want a quick turnaround or I want a fast lease, what does that mean exactly? So the key performance indicator is from the time the tenant moves out to the time the property is listed. The KPI we want is 10 days. The time that property is listed till the time we find a tenant, we want that to be under 30 days. So those are rough numbers to be able to use.
So I knew what that meant, but it gave me the opportunity to really stop really quick and say, if you're enjoying this show, don't forget to like and subscribe, because I'm going to have guests like Cameron on all the time who are going to give out some valuable information. So I've got a couple of snap questions, and then I like to end with something funny. Best rental property lesson in one sentence.
It's difficult, but it's worth it.
Worst landlord habit.
Doing everything themselves.
Most overrated metric.
Ooh. That one is a good one. Most overrated metric. Uh, I would say, and this is kind of difficult, but keeping costs down. Some people say maintenance costs like super low, like, oh, look, I didn't do any maintenance on this property, but that's because you just let everything get dilapidated. And now you have a huge expense 2, 3, 4 years down the road. I know that was more than one sentence, or sorry.
No, it's okay. I would have used cap rate.
Oh, that is a good one too. Yep.
Right? Because owners, they want a cap rate. And they're only using the metric of the global, this is how much I want, and this is what the market perception is of where my cap rate will be or should be.
That's a good one.
I think that's the most overrated metric. Finish a sentence for me. The landlord who wins in 2026 is the landlord who
moves quickly or is disciplined, or is disciplined.
So it's really what I'm hearing from you a lot of times is really that landlord who wants to step back and allow the property manager to be the professional.
If that's who you hired, if you hired a company that has outsourced everything and you don't have anybody to talk to, then you need to be the one to, have lit a fire under your rear end. But if you're doing it yourself, just get it organized, speed, because we only have a certain tenant pool in almost every city across the country. There's only a certain tenant pool. And now that we have a glut of supply, there's less houses or more houses to pick from and less tenants. So you need to get a tenant in there and try to weather the storm so that, you can ride it out and hopefully kick this can down the road 2 or 3 years to then bump up rents, then get aggressive on certain things. But yes, speed now is where it's at. You do not want your property sitting. You don't want to get a squatter. You don't want to have break-ins. I see people lackadaisically do that, and speed and discipline, just seem to go out the door. Go back to the hobbyist thing, or, it's like treat it like a hobby.
So I'm a big cartoon person.
Okay.
So I like to talk cartoons. If Fred and Barney from the Flintstones came to you and they bought a rental property or came to you and said, we want to buy some rentals, what would you tell Fred and Barney? Knowing Fred and Barney as we do in cartoons.
I know, I'm trying to, gosh, it's been a minute, Herb, since I watched that. I mean, Fred works all day.
Yep.
Very hard job. So I would just say that the time thing, I would go back to, if you are going to buy a rental property, which I think, again, is still a great way to build wealth. For the average individual, it is still one of the best ways to build wealth with leverage, even with interest rates the way they are. It's just, are you ready to have that time commitment on the nights and weekends? Because again, things happen after hours and you never, without warning. Are you ready to keep up on some of those laws and stay on top of tenants' rights and advocacy groups? And if not, are you ready to go out and spend some time hiring a professional to do that? And either way, you're going to either cut your teeth and figure it out on your own, or go through the difficulty of finding a professional to, screen through all the bad property managers to find somebody to help you.
Awesome. So now that I got you thinking cartoons, who are you? And when you think about cartoon characters, who best exemplifies who you are? Are you SpongeBob or?
I'm probably more of a Patrick. No,
people really like Patrick. I had someone else talk about Patrick the other day. Why you say Patrick?
I don't know, just being facetious. I guess just to stick with the SpongeBob analogy, Mr. Krabs, I know he's all money, but more on the business side, and I think I do that in the capacity for our owners. And I think that's kind of a cool thing. I'm not flippant with money. I treat their property and their expenses like my own. So I am very cost conscious because I am still our largest client. So all our processes and systems, I see the blunt of it too. And is it good, bad, or indifferent? So I am, I guess, got all those, hands or paws
Thanks.
trying to make sure, we get we keep our, yeah.
All right. So I have one last question, and this is a boundary question,
Yep.
right? So you, everybody, their property is their first priority.
Yep.
What's your first priority? And where do you put boundaries in your own life?
I am bad about that. Very bad. It cost me, to be totally transparent, it did cost me a relationship early on when I was building this rental portfolio. I'd go to work from 5. I was allowed to go in at 5 a.m. So I was done from, started at 5, I left at 3. And then from 3 to 10, I pretty much I put out bandit signs. I called owners. I went on property walks, and it cost me one of my relationships back then. So I think I am not the person to give advice on that. But I will say the thing that I think is my biggest concern and my biggest focus is the team, because no longer we're at the size now that if I work every single second of every single day, I cannot accomplish what my team can accomplish. And so I have to continue to educate the team, continue to lift them up so that they can take care of the owners, my properties, our properties, the relationship. And so my biggest focus and main focus is the team.
Interesting. One of the comments and sort of guidelines that I give to clients is I'm a full service professional, but you're probably not going to need me at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And my phone goes off at 8.
Yep.
Right. And normally it's off at 6, but I give that wiggle room. Mm-hmm. Right. They're not going to need you at 10 o'clock at night. And if they do, they're probably going to need a 911 plumber or a 911 emergency. And it allows me to tell them that I have a boundary in my life. Yep. So it sounds like you haven't found that place yet to create that boundary. And when you talk to your audience, what would you tell your audience and your clients? I'm going to put you on the spot here to say, hey, give me a boundary. How would you tell them that?
I think I'm really good with it with the team. I want to make sure that, we have unlimited PTO. So, but I'm not a big person to sit on the beach, Herb. I don't like hunting. I don't like fishing. I'm not really a big hobbyist. I like what I do. I really enjoy real estate. It has allowed me opportunities that would never have otherwise. I'd still be sitting in a desk somewhere under fluorescent lights in Houston, in a skyscraper there. Right. So I guess to the audience, to our clientele or potential clientele is, just know that these people have lives. They have dogs. They have families that, at night they want to see, or on the weekends they're going to take trips and take time off. So being a little patient with that. And I do think it's my duty and my responsibility to make sure we have coverage. So just being a little bit patient doesn't mean just because we didn't get back to you within, 30 seconds or at 8 o'clock at night, doesn't mean that we're doing something nefarious or that your property still isn't being cared for.
Right. And thank you for indulging me on that, because I think a lot of times when you're in the real estate, the many assets and facets of the real estate field, the general public perception is that you're at my beck and call.
Yes.
And what I was really wanting to get to was, hey, we have lives, you have lives, and to create that boundary. And I think it is for you, it sounds to me like you're managing your team really well, but also just taking the time to have your own boundary and make sure that you're respecting your own time, because we're so client focused in our roles here.
I couldn't agree more, Herb. And I think Rent Engine, one of their other stats was that 50% of tenant leads come after hours. So you've got to are you going to work all day and then respond to leads all night? I think you're 100% right. It's this industry. And that's why you got to also find somebody that knows. Are you hiring an assistant that has no skill that you're going to tell them what to do, or you're hiring a professional? And like you said, like you're full service, we're full service. Like we got it. We've got 24-hour emergency lines. We've got somebody dedicated to respond to maintenance. We have all that laid out. Like you calling at 8 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock isn't going to change what we're going to do or not going to do. So I 100% agree with you. And Herb, that will probably change in 2 years' time. We're going to start a family here soon. So I don't have any kids. I just got, a dog. So that's probably going to change a lot in a couple of years.
Good first step.
Yeah. I know this is therapy, Herb. Thank you. My wife is going to send you a thank you card for sure.
Well, folks, that's a wrap. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more raw, real financial talk in the Sandbox. Cameron, thanks so much for joining me today. This has really been a pleasure.
Likewise, Herb. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.